Why you keep betraying your future self. It's 11:47 at night. Your alarm is set for 6:30. You already know what tomorrow morning will feel like. The heavy eyes, the headache, the promise that tonight you'll definitely sleep earlier. And yet your finger moves toward one more episode, one more video, 10 more minutes. The strange part isn't that you don't know the consequences. You know them perfectly. You just don't seem to care very much. At least, not yet. Because the person who has to suffer for this decision isn't sitting here right now. They arrive tomorrow morning. And somehow, that makes all the difference. This happens everywhere. You spend money that another version of you will wish you had saved. You postpone work that another version of you will have to finish under pressure. You skip the workout, avoid the conversation, delay the appointment, ignore the problem. And every time, the same invisible transaction happens. Present, you gets the reward. Future, you gets the bill. So why do we keep doing this? Why are human beings so willing to create problems for the one person they know they are going to become? Psychologists have a name for part of the answer: temporal discounting. The basic idea is simple. A reward becomes less valuable to us when we have to wait for it. Take a choice like this: $100 today or $110 a year from now. Mathematically, the second option gives you more money. Psychologically, it may not feel that way, because 10 extra dollars exists in the future. The 100 exists now, and now has enormous power. But this gets stranger. Ask someone whether they want $100 in 10 years or $110 in 11 years, and waiting an extra year may suddenly seem reasonable. Both rewards are far away, but move the same choice closer: $100 today or $110 next year, and people can switch. Nothing changed about the extra year. What changed was that one reward crossed an invisible border. It became now. And that border can rewrite what we want. This is why Sunday night you can genuinely decide: starting tomorrow, I'm going to bed early. Then Monday night you looks at the clock at midnight and says, well, starting tomorrow. Both versions mean it. They just don't have equal power at the same moment. But delayed rewards are only part of the story. Because researchers have found something even more personal. People differ in how connected they feel to their future selves. For some people, the person they will be 10 or 20 years from now feels deeply connected to who they are today. For others, that person feels distant, abstract, almost unfamiliar. Researchers call this future self-continuity, and that distance appears to matter. Studies have linked stronger connection with the future self to greater willingness to wait for later rewards, more future-focused choices, academic performance, health behavior, and saving. But one experiment made the idea visible. Researchers showed people digitally aged versions of their own faces, not a random old person. Them. Older, wrinkled, gray-haired. A face belonging to a person who did not exist yet, but eventually might. Participants who interacted with these age-progressed versions of themselves became more willing, in experimental settings, to allocate money toward retirement. That doesn't mean seeing an old photograph magically fixes your finances. The effect has limits, and later research shows these interventions don't always produce dramatic changes. But the experiment revealed something important. The future is easier to neglect when it has no face, and that creates a strange possibility. Maybe part of the reason you keep sacrificing future is that future you doesn't quite feel like you yet. There's even neuroscience pointing in this direction. In one influential brain imaging study, researchers asked people to think about themselves now and themselves in the future. The greater the difference in certain patterns of brain activity between thinking about present self and future self, the more strongly some participants later discounted delayed rewards. This is sometimes simplified online into, your brain thinks your future self is a stranger. That goes too far. There is no stranger button in the brain. And scientists have not discovered a little region that decides future. You is somebody else. The real finding is subtler, and probably more interesting. Your connection to the person you will become exists in degrees. Future you can feel close, or distant, concrete, or blurry. And when that future person feels distant enough, their problems become easier to ignore. Humans understood this problem long before brain scanners existed. Thousands of years ago, the story of Odysseus gave us one of the strangest examples. Odysseus wanted to hear the song of the Sirens, but he also knew that once he heard them, his desires would change. So before that happened, he had himself tied to the mast of his ship. He ordered his crew not to release him, no matter how desperately he begged. Think about what he was doing. One version of Odysseus was protecting himself from another version of Odysseus. Present Odysseus knew that future Odysseus could not be trusted. So he removed future Odysseus's ability to choose. We still do this. Automatic savings, deadlines, blocking distracting websites, keeping junk food out of the house, giving your friend your car keys before drinking. These are called commitment devices. But another way to describe them is much stranger. They are contracts between different versions of the same person. And this raises a bigger question. Which version of you should actually win? Because constantly choosing the future creates its own problem. You can save every pleasure for later, work through every weekend, postpone every trip, delay every dream. Tell yourself you'll enjoy life when the mortgage is paid, when the kids are older, when the business succeeds, when you retire. But there is always another future you waiting. At 20, you sacrifice for 30. At 30, you sacrifice for 40. At 40, for 50. And if future you always matters more than present you, then no version of you ever gets permission to live. So maybe the lesson isn't that present you is selfish, and it isn't that future you should always win. The real problem is that every version of you gets control for only a short time. Today's version inherits your body, money, relationships, and consequences from yesterday. Then, before disappearing, it passes all of them forward. You are not one permanent person making decisions across an entire lifetime. You are a chain of slightly different people, each holding the steering wheel for a moment. The person watching this video will not be exactly the person who wakes up 10 years from now. Different memories, different priorities, different fears, maybe even different beliefs. But that person will inherit what you leave behind. And tomorrow morning, when the alarm goes off after 4 hours of sleep, something strange happens. Future you finally becomes present you. Suddenly, the exhaustion matters. The deadline matters. The money matters. The consequence that felt distant becomes real. And by then, the person who made the decision is already gone. Maybe that's what growing up really is. Learning to care about someone you haven't become yet, without forgetting the person who is here right now.